winner! Welcome to Red Hot Mindset. I'm so glad you are joining me today. We are back today with another 2020 Boston Mother Runner series, and I'm just loving hearing these stories. I hope you're enjoying them too. I'd love to hear. I'd love to hear what you're getting out of them and out of the interviews. Are you loving the struggle victory stories as much as I am? Today's Mother Runner doesn't know how to quit, and that's a good thing, because years of resilience and determination landed her with a bid to the 2020 Boston Marathon. And today we get to hear all about her journey to get there. It took about 6 years, 28 marathons, and a couple major setbacks to do it, but she did. And the best part of the experience is that she gets to set the example for her kids on how to persevere. Shannon White lives in Big Lake, Minnesota with her husband of 20 years and their 4 girls ages 15, 13, 11, and 9. Her girls are all involved with sports including tennis, volleyball, basketball, soccer, softball, track, and gymnastics, so they understand a busy schedule. They also have 12 chickens, a dog, and 2 kittens. Shannon works full-time as a CT tech on overnights at HCMC, a level 1 trauma center in Minneapolis, and also works as a casual employee at 3 other hospitals and a radiology outpatient center. She's been immersed in the hybrid learning with her girls and training for her 30th marathon, whenever that will happen. Are you ready? I can't wait for you to hear her story, so let's get chatting. Hey, Shannon, thanks so much for joining me today. I'm really excited to dive into your story and for listeners to get to hear all the things about running and qualifying for Boston and the struggle victories in between.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Before we get going, I want listeners to kind of get to know a little bit about you. So would you mind just sharing a little bit about you, your family, where you're from, all those good things?
Well, I grew up in a small town in Minnesota. It's called Evansville. It's like a town of 500 people.
Okay.
Super, super small. And then went to college up in Moorhead at Concordia. And then my husband and I, after we both got done with college, we moved to Big Lake, Minnesota. It's right in between St. Cloud and the city. So it worked out for both of our jobs and stuff. He was in St. Cloud, and then I was down in the city, so it worked out kind of in between. We've been here for 17 years now. It's a long time. We have 4 girls. My oldest will be 15 in November, a 13-year-old, 11-year-old, and a 9-year-old. Busy. They're all in sports right now. We have volleyball, we have tennis. We just got done with tennis, basketball, soccer, gymnastics. It's crazy busy. I work full-time overnights at HCMC. It's a level 1 trauma center in Minneapolis. And I have a bunch of casual jobs at another level 1 trauma center in Minneapolis, a St. Cloud hospital, and a couple other little smaller hospitals and clinics. So we are crazy busy in my house. So
You have got a lot going on. I have to tell you, 2 of my besties live in Big Lake. So
Oh, really?
yeah, they love it. They're just like, it's my little small town and it's great. And
It
I feel
is.
like they live in the boonies. So
It's
anyway,
so funny because when people say that they're from a small town, and Big Lake does feel small, but we have 10,000, and I'm like, small is where I grew up. I graduated with 23 kids in my class. I'm like, that's super small. So this is like a good happy in between, not full on Minneapolis, but
yeah,
it,
that's perfect.
it
So,
is a
and
boon.
it's kind of nice if you work in Minneapolis, you work in the busy, and then you can kind of go to a little bit smaller place and just
Exactly.
yeah.
We have 3 acres, and we have we have 12 chickens and some kittens and a dog. So we're just a happening place out here.
Yeah, that's awesome. So when you say casual with other trauma centers, is that like you're on call? Do you work a certain
Yes.
amount of hours every week?
Um, the trauma center, that the other hospital that I'm at down in the Minneapolis, that's just so whenever they need me, if I'm available. There's a smaller town that has a hospital next to Big Lake, and I'm a .2 status there.
Okay.
So I'm 1.0 at Hennepin, and then I work every 3rd weekend there. So yeah, working like crazy.
Yeah. So do you usually work more than 40 hours?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. And you know what? Trauma centers, they just don't stop, I'm sure. I'm sure it's kind of hard to be there, but definitely needed. So it's really cool that you're in there helping and And you're a CT,
CT tech.
CT tech. Okay. Very cool. So tell me, how did you first get into running? When did that become a part of your life?
Well, I was going through X-ray school, and one of my classmates and I were like, "Oh, let's do, like, let's sign up for grandma's half marathon." Like, this was at the beginning of the year. We're like, we'll do a little New Year's challenge kind of thing, and I'm like, "All right, game on!" Like, why not add some more stress when we're going through school? Add this on. But we did it the first night we went out. It was like a weeknight, and we were by the college there, and my classmate was like, she's like, let's just run down to the block and see how we do. So we got all bundled up and we ran, and then she's like, I stopped at the end of the block, and she's like, no, I meant like the next block. I'm like, oh, no, 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 no. Like, I'm done. Like, one block's enough. And she's like, no, 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 we just need to keep going. So we kept going, and then we just got further and further and further, and we just kept doing it, and here we are. And we there's a little Earth Day 5K that we did in prep for this grandma's half, and we ran that, and that was my first race, and I'm like, I was kind of hooked after that. And then when we did grandma's, and then um she ran up the lemon drop hill, like, so that's what grandma's is known for, is like the little lemon drop hill, and she ran it up it twice for me because she was waiting for me. She's like, I will never do that again.
During
And
the
she's like,
race, just waiting for you?
yes.
Oh my
And
God.
she was running a little ahead of me, and then I'm like, all right. And then so she's like, that's what a true friend is, going up that hill twice. And this was only for the half too. So like we were both just dying. But like for some reason I got addicted, and she's like, I think I'm done. So I just kept running, and she kind of fizzled out, and here we are. Like, that was in 2002. So 18 years later.
Wow. And you didn't start running marathons until 2012?
2012, my daughter was a year old. So yeah,
So, and was she your old? No, she's not your oldest. Your
she's my
youngest.
young.
Your
Yeah.
youngest was
Yeah.
okay. So, and you've run 29 marathons. Boston would have been your 30th, right? Or was Boston your 29th?
But
The virtual.
the Bur- the Brookings was, and the virtual was like 29.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I
So
don't know if you count that like as two marathons or one. I don't know how that works.
I don't know, I'd count it.
All right. So yeah, 29 and then 30 with the virtual. And yeah, so
Wow. Wow. So 29 since 2012. That's only 8 years, which means you probably average what, 3 or 4 a year? Did you do like one a year and then a bunch one year? How did that play out?
2012, my sister-in-law did Twin Cities. That was another little New Year's challenge kind of thing. We're like, we both just had kids, and that Paisley would have been my last one. And
Mhm.
then she had her daughter, and we're like, we need to challenge ourselves and do something. Both of us love running. So we signed up, and we did Twin Cities. So our babies were just a little over a year, and yeah, that was amazing. We Twin Cities, and then the last mile going on Summit, and then just seeing that flag with the fire truck with the flag, or the flags. And it was just, I started hyperventilating. I'm like, I can't believe I actually just ran a marathon. Like, this is amazing. Like, I can't believe I did it. And these guys would stop, and they're like, are you okay? I'm like, I'm fine. This is fine. I'm just finishing my first marathon. And like, it was just such a surreal experience, like knowing that you like committed yourself and you did this. Like, this, it was just amazing. And then so like the feeling that we got from finishing that marathon was just amazing. So then like 2 weeks later, we signed up for Fargo. And then we get to the train again, and then went to Fargo, and like instead of crying at the finish at like we did at Twin Cities, we cried at the start, like realizing like, oh gosh, this is like 26 miles we have to do this again for. But we did it.
I love it. And then you just kind of got addicted and figured it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's so fun. So now you have four-ish jobs, you have four girls, you do a lot of marathons in a year. So I want to know kind of, what is your week like? What does your normal day look like? How do you get your training in?
Oh geez. So what this summer was like, far as like this year goes, we I worked the overnights, and then the kids didn't have school, so I would just meet up with some friends after work pretty much every day. and then we'd go for a run or we'd hit up the track and stuff. And then I'd come home and sleep, and then sleep probably from like, I don't know, 10 until 3, and then have supper and stuff with the kids and hang out with the kids, or do something with the kids like right after I got done running, and then come home and sleep. My husband plays a big, huge role in all of this. Like, he's been my lifesaver, like hauling the kids to all the sports while I sleep, or vice versa. The reason why I started working overnights is just to have a more of a set schedule, and then to be able to pick up whenever I could, at every other place. Um, just because my hours before were so off, and I just missed the kids too much. And then, like with training and stuff, I just needed to have a set schedule. So it's been working out good. I do my long runs Sunday mornings typically, and then do like a workout Saturday, and then a workout Tuesday, and then just easy running the rest. So it's been super fun, like the summer running. I know we weren't supposed to
Yeah.
with social distancing, but like
We needed
we
it.
had this. I know, like those girls have been my saving grace, like all summer long with this. Like with work, it's just been so crazy with COVID, and then with all the stuff going on in Minneapolis. So it's just a mental release, if nothing else. Like running has just been a game changer. Like we needed that just to like solve all the world's problems when we've been out running. So it's been crazy.
Oh yeah. And that was one thing I was so thankful for. We had our running, and I kind of did the same. I quarantined essentially with our neighbor. She's like one of my favorite friends to run with, and her younger boys are my youngest, or her two boys are my youngest age. So, I mean, we just lived life together and did it. And I was like, well, we're quarantined together. It doesn't matter. So, but you kind of need that. I think we needed support in that time. It was so just unknown and so like lonely, so having those couple runner friends, so needed. Hmm.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah. So I know your daughters are all into sports too, so now that fall came and sports started up again and all that, what does your schedule look like now? How do you do your training?
So I still do the same thing. They're all old enough to get on the bus themselves. So we go to school, we do the hybrids. So my girls go Thursdays and Fridays to school. Um, I still come home after work. I get done at 7 in the morning, come home and then run. And then I kind of take, and then I'll sleep for a little bit and then get the kids up. And now it's a little bit harder when they don't have school. We all have to bring them to their sports. So I've been lacking sleep for the last like 2 years working on these overnights. That's like the big challenge for me, is like lacking in sleep. But so Mondays, Tuesdays and Wednesdays, I'll get up, I'll sleep for a couple hours and get up, and then bring them to their sports, and then come home and sleep for a little bit, and then have dinner and supper, and then go back to work. So it's just, you do the best you can. And like my kids take first priority. So if there's a day that I'm like, I can't run, like I can't do it, like my kids take the first steps. But and I've been pretty lax about this. Like um I think that as the summer went on, like my kids have, like I've just been prioritizing my kids a little bit more than my running. So like if they needed me to go somewhere, I'm like, all right, like I'll still get my run in, but it's not like I'll switch it up. If I have to do a workout that's going to be a little bit longer, one day, like I'll switch that and do it a different day when I have more time. So I've been kind of more slacking on that, I guess, but to just prioritize, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's important for us to prioritize. Our kids do come first. And it's cool. It's good for them to see us training and doing something and staying healthy. But it's also important for them to see that that won't get in the way. It won't become like an idol in our life. Will be their first priority, or your family is first priority. So I love that. That's really great. So I know your girls are really active in sports. Do they do so gymnastics is year round? Is one of your girls like a gymnast year round, or is it just kind of a maintenance kind of thing? Or
She is year round. She does practices three times a week for 3 hours, typically at a time. So she's got practice on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays during the week. And then they canceled all the meets up until they finally put some on the schedule now, in January and February. So, and it just, we haven't been able to go in and watch them. So that's just it'll be interesting when we actually can go see a meet, because then we'll I haven't seen her practice, so I don't know like all of her skills and like what she's been able to do all summer long and stuff. So, and only one person can come watch her meet. So I think we're gonna have some fighting problems here. I'm like, Mama always wins.
I agree. I agree because so my older two boys are gymnasts, competitive gymnasts too. So we're still waiting to hear about meet season. We're like, I don't know what's going on, but yeah. So, but I would be like, yep, nope, mom gets to go. It's kind of one of those sports you just want to be there, you know?
Right, right.
Yeah. So, well, good. Well, when did the idea of qualifying for the Boston Marathon come into play? Was it pretty soon into your running? Was it, a few years in? When was it?
Um, the first marathon I finished, Twin Cities, was in 4:27. Um, and then I did Fargo, and that was in 4:15. So I'm like, I keep kind of progressing at this time. Like, I think it's, I feel like I'm doing better and better, each time. Like, you get your one marathon under your belt, because you really have no expectations for your first marathon. You just kind of want to finish. And like, I kept getting a little bit better. I'm like, well, now I'm going to try to get under 4 hours. And so, I did Fargo in 4:15, and then I did Twin Cities again, and that would have been in 2013. And
Mhm.
I just barely, I got 4:01.
Hmm.
So I'm still, I'm still doing better and stuff. And then I signed up for the Nashville Marathon, and I totally went backwards on that one. The weather was hot. Like, I thought I was gonna die. It was like 90 some degrees that year, and it was horrible, horrible. So I'm like, well, all right, like, okay. So then I just like, we'll see. I'm just gonna blame that one on the weather. And then I did grandma's that year. And I don't remember, like, I've done grandma's every year since 2014 except for this year, but so I don't remember like what the weather was at, but I finally finished in under 3 hours, or 4 hours, sorry. 3 hours. Um, so I did that in a 3:55, I think. So then I'm like, oh, this is good. And then I signed up for the lottery for Chicago, and then the lottery for New York City. And I got into both of those.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
like, what are the chances of me getting into both of those? But I did. So I'm like, they're 3 weeks apart, like, game on. So I trained all summer for those. Didn't have a coach. So I was just doing it on my own, like the Hal Hidgen training plan. And I don't know that when I ran um, with each of these marathons that I've done, what we did is we took one of the girls on each of these racecations.
Mm.
So my husband and I took my second oldest to Chicago, and then we took my oldest to New York, and then my third to LA, and then fourth to Phoenix. So we kind of broke it just to have their own little separate little trips and their one-on-one time with us, because they're always together. So it was kind of fun
Mm.
separating them. But so we went with my second oldest to Chicago, and I haven't done a major marathon, but that was just such a surreal experience. Like, it was overwhelming with the cheers and the crowd support and all that. And I had a amazing race. And like, after that, I was like, this is awesome. Like, I think I can qualify for Boston after this, because I think I got down to like a 3:48. So I'm like,
Wow.
that's not far from qualifying. I'm like, never in a million years did I think that I would be even fast enough to qualify. But I'm like, I kind of put a little spark in my, like, step. I'm like, I think I can do this. Like, it was just the crowd support. I think there was the adrenaline rush from all those people just cheering. Like, it was overwhelming. So I'm like, I think I can do this. Like, I think I can. So I ran New York. Then three weeks later, didn't do obviously as good because it's so close to each other. But and then I had bronchitis and whatever. But ran that same amazing experience. Like, New York is, to all of my marathons, the number one so far for me. Like, it's amazing. It was amazing experience. But um, then I thought, I'm like, I think I can, so I'm going to start to try to see if I can qualify. Um, Then I signed up for Fargo. Fargo, I had like a weird train pure forma thing, so I kind of set myself back. That one was back around 4 hours again. Then I did grandma's again, got back under, but still like still wasn't having it. Like I'm doing something wrong. I don't know, but I just kept training and running, and finally what so what one is that? I talked to some friends then, since I had such an awesome experience in Chicago then 2014. I talked them into running, having a little girls' vacation in 2015 with
Hmm.
them, and was hoping for that same experience, hoping those girls would have the same experience, like with all the crowd support and the adrenaline rush. And I finished not upright on that race, and that kind of I don't know if it was we haven't quite figured out what happened, but my core temperature it was warmer that day, not like crazy like Nashville was, but it was in the low 70s, mid 70s. I think I just overworked myself weeks prior going into it. Like I was working doubles and overtime and overnights and not sleeping, and ended up. There's a little hill at the end of Chicago. Like you turn, and then it's just mean. It's just really mean how they do this little hill at the end of mile 26. So you turn and go up this hill, and then start going down into the finisher chute. My calf started cramping up. I'm like, this is weird. I'm like, never cramped before. And then I just blacked out. I didn't like, people came and they were trying to hold me and carry me across the finish line. And so my finisher line photos for that race was a code person, and like they had little MD and the code person on their little vests or whatever, and they were wheeling me across the finish line. I had burn marks from my arm from hitting the wheelchair tire on my arm after that. But they put me in the medical tent. They soaked me in an ice bath for like 25 minutes before I even woke up. My core temperature was 107.3. There was just I had ended up going into the ER, and they gave me 4 liters of fluids. Um, so that kind of put a little damper on my like thinking I could qualify for Boston. They told me followed up with my doctor back here, and he's like, "Don't run a marathon for a year." He's like, "Your body needs to like readjust. Like you've been working it way too hard. Like you just need to take a step back." Of course, I didn't listen. Like I took a couple weeks off, and then back at it again. I started training then again for Fargo and grandma's, and then I ended up um, tearing my quad. Like I tore some muscles in my quad, and I'm like, oh, like this is just payback for me not listening to the doctors the first time. And then note to self: whenever you go on a marathon, like with some friends and not your husband, make sure you put whoever you're running with um, on your emergency contacts.
Oh,
So they were trying to call my husband back in Minnesota, and we're in Chicago. Like he's like, there's nothing I can do here. So like trying to, it was just such a mess because my friends didn't know where I was, and they didn't have access to find out to see if I was even in the medical tent, because I wasn't their names weren't on my emergency contact list. So it got a little tricky. So they had to figure out what hospital I was at, and it
wow.
was interesting. So on that note, but I was out doing a training run. This was in April of then the following after Chicago happened, and I got a phone call from the school saying one of my daughters was sick. So I went to pick her up, and I got out of the car, and I couldn't walk.
Oh my God.
Like I couldn't walk. I couldn't lift my leg up. I had to physically pick my leg up with my arms to even get out of the car. And I'm like, this isn't right. Like it had been bothering me, but I'm like, it's fine. You're a runner. You can run through all this stuff. Picked her up, and I couldn't walk. I ended up going into the orthopedic surgeon, and I had some tears in my from the MRI, and she's like, if it shows up on an MRI, it's bad, Shannon. And I'm like, no, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. She's like, what are you training for? I'm like, Fargo and grandma's. And she's like, you won't finish both. You can try, but she's like, you won't finish both. And I'm friends with this orthopedic surgeon, so she knows how I am. And she's
Mhm.
like, you're not going to finish both. She goes, if you try to finish both, you're going to tear your quad up even more, and you might never walk again. And that kind of put me into a little depressed the mode. I sat out in my car and cried for a good half an hour after that. I'm like, here's a race in Chicago, that was like the first race that I ever did that I felt like I could qualify for Boston. And then the year after that, it literally almost killed me. Like I had a come to Jesus moment,
Mm.
like sitting in the ice tub at the marathon in the medical tent. And I'm like, this is like something how is something I love so much just taking me down. So then I'm like, then when the doctor said that I couldn't run both marathons, I'm like, okay, like it's not stopping me. I'm still gonna do it. So I found one of the Ys close enough to my house that had like a deeper pool than the one that I usually go to. I strapped on that little belt and I did some aqua jogging for like 3 months. I'm like, so I ended up dropping down to just the 10K in Fargo, ran that super slow. I wouldn't even say run it. I pretty much walked it.
Okay.
And then I'm like, no, I'm still going to do grandma's. So I did grandma's. I walked, ran that one. And anyone who knows me knows that like how headstrong I am, I guess, if I'm going to do aqua jogging to train for these marathons, because I absolutely cannot stand the water. Like I'm out in there and I got that little ball wrapped around me and I'm like just going to town, but I'm like, this is how desperate I am. Like I've got some sheer determination here. So I did grandma's that year. That was a super hot year. So, and I finished in like 4:46. So I was pretty proud of myself actually for even just finishing in that time, because I think a lot of people went down that year. I think, what year was it? That would have been 2016.
Yeah, I remember.
Um, oh, horrible, horrible. So I'm like, as everyone's like dying, I'm like, hey, this is fine. I'm just running. I'm like, all right, because I'm one thing too. But and then I trained. So that went, I mean, I finished. So I was pretty happy with that, just even finishing with the quad tear that I had. Summer went along. I signed up for St. George. We ran St. George. And then I thought I was doing better with my times. I thought I was like back on track, and I finished in 4:10. And that day was super hot too. And I think from when I collapsed in Chicago, I think having that heat stroke, or I don't know, heat exhaustion or whatever I ended up having, I think with the heat and the humidity, like the St. George wasn't humid, but I think it just affected me more.
Mhm.
So St. George was hot. It got hot. I think my body just didn't like it. Like, so then super slow. Um, so then I was like, on the way back, I was supposed to do the Twin Cities 10 mile the week after. And I was so mad at my time from St. George. Ended up signing up for the full marathon because I'm thinking I could do better a week later. I don't know what I was thinking.
It's a runner thing.
So yeah. So I signed up for they wouldn't let me transfer bibs to the from the 10 miles to the marathon. So I ended up paying full price then for the marathon and ran that. And of course, then it went from like 90 degrees out in St. George to that year in Twin Cities, it was cold. So like a week difference from like 30 degrees to 90 degrees or whatever. But needless to say, that one didn't end well either. So I'm like, okay, something, like I need to get a coach. Like I need to do something different because this isn't working. I need to start being smarter about what I'm doing. Like if I'm going to put full on effort into all these races, I need to do something different. So I hired a coach. And he's like, well, one of your major problems is you can't be doing 4 marathons a year. Like your body's not meant to be doing 4 marathons a year. I'm like, I'm fine. No, you're not going to do that. So I started training with him. What did I do? I did LA marathon. I did, and I still did all the marathons because I wanted to. And he's like, it's not a good idea, but I did them. I did LA, Lake Wobegon, grandma's that year, and then I did Chicago again, and then Madison. And each race with him, I kept getting better and better. So I'm like, okay, like I see progression. Like this is awesome. Like this is working. Like whatever he's having me do, like this is working. But I wasn't progressing like I thought that I should have been. So I'm like, I'm on my own then. So 2018, I went kind of on my own. I did the Phoenix marathon, and I did a 3:46. So that was just like a minute away because that was before they changed the qualifying times again. So I'm like, I'm like so close. But I'm like, I'm just going to kind of go off of what my coach had told me before and just kind of do that. And of course, then I set myself backwards because I just wasn't listening to what he had told me, and I should have kept. I thought I could do it on my own. Um, so that year, then I ended up going backwards, and then I'm like, okay, I got to hire this guy back. So I did. What did I do? Um, I did some marathons, but they just didn't. They just they I don't know if it was something like the weather, or I didn't do as good as I thought. So I hired him back on. He's like, at the end of the year, he's like, you have to promise me you won't do another marathon until May. He's like, at least May, you have to give me some time to help you out here. And I'm like, okay, I promise. And it was so hard to like stick to my promise because I'm like a chronic marathoner,
Mm-hmm.
but it worked. I mean, I did Hartford, and I did two back-to-back marathons in October of 2000. I'm having my like little list here. 2018, and we did Hartford and then Vermont, like back to back. And then that one was Saturday, one was Sunday, and that was an amazing experience. And then I'm like, okay, now's the time that I'll do these two races, and I'm going to hold out till May to do another one. And I did. I worked all winter long, and he trained me. And Mountains Beach came in May, and I just started back at HCMC. I'd been working at the smaller hospital. Uh, it's just had allergies, and I have a torn labrum in my hip. So just sitting, like doing new training and stuff, and all day I was like, I'm just so nervous about this marathon. Just been sitting too much, and my hips bothering me, and allergies. And so I'm like going into this race, like, I don't know if I can do this. Like every other race I've seeming like I've been failing at. My coach was like, he's like, you need to not have that attitude. Like your race is going to be done before it's even started. If you're having that, like change your attitude.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, okay, I can do it. I can do this. We went out to California and I did that Mountains to Beach. My coach had called me the night before, and he's like, okay, he's like, make sure you smile at every mile. Like you pass that mile marker, you start smiling, smile as big as you can, like every single mile, do that. I'm like, okay, just giving me a little pep talk. I was out there with just my husband this time for our anniversary too. We were celebrating our anniversary.
Cool.
And I'm just like, I wasn't feeling all that great just going into it because this has been a long week with training and I'm like, like I have to have a better attitude. And so I went into this with a lot more gratefulness. And I'm like, I am enough. Like I can do this. Like every other race, it was just a big fear of failure because I'm like, I usually crashed at mile 17 or like it's just, like in my eyes, like if I'm not going to make it, if I would rather lose out on a marathon by like 5 minutes for qualifying for Boston than by like 2 seconds. So I think that had been my attitude. Like I just needing to change it. And so I went into this race and like, I'm going to, trust that I can do this process better this time and not going to let anything get to me. And I'm like, wrote some stuff on my arms and smiled at every mile. And I was like, I got to mile like 18. I'm like, wow, I feel good. Cause I'm like, usually I start off way too hot. So then I was like,
Yeah.
the first couple of miles, I'm like, ooh, this is not good. Like this feels good. Like it shouldn't feel this good to me. Like I'm just waiting for that crash. And I'm like, still feeling good. I'm still feeling good. My husband's like meeting me at like every couple miles or wherever he can. And he's like, wow, you're doing good. Like keep it going. And then one spot he was supposed to have my little goo gels and he's too busy talking to some other guy on the side of the road that he totally missed me. And I'm like, what's going on here? Like I need my gels. And he's like, wasn't expecting you to be coming up so hot still. Because I think he's just so used to me like crashing and burning. But he's like, I'll get you at the next one. I'm like, okay. So kept going. And like, this was the first race. Like, I'm like, just the attitude and the gratitude I had, like just smiling. And it was amazing. Like I never crashed. I'm like, at the end, I just started picking people off. I'm like, I can get you. Like I would just see them and just kind of reel them in. And it was amazing. And then I felt like I slowed down. Like I was like, this is too good to be true, even at the end. But like I was coming around the end and, I looked at the time. I'm like, I think I'm going to do this. Like, I think I'm going to do this. And there it was. Like, we finished and it felt amazing. But then, like, I've been so used to like failing in all these marathons. Like, is this even good enough? I qualified and like I got 2 minutes and 50 seconds, 55 seconds under. But is that even good enough? So I think I even qualifying, I still let that get in my head. Like, is this good enough? Am I even good enough for this?
Hmm.
So then you live like for the next well,
Yeah.
from May to September till you find out, like, is this even good enough? Like, did I do all this work? Am I good enough? But my coach had called me then afterwards and he's like, like I'm like, I have no idea where that came from. And he's like, Shannon, you've been working your butt off for the last 6 months. He's like, you got it in you. You just have to believe in yourself. He's like, I know that you could do it. I'm like, like, and you hear that from everyone, like, oh, you can do this, you're good. But like, it just doesn't, for me, it just never sank in until like you can hear it from someone like, I believe in you. And it works. So here we are, like, then hoping that 2020 would not happen like this, I'm sure, like with everyone else. So in this process, it's been 5 years. Well, 2014 was when I actually thought I could do it, so it's been 6 years of trying and not succeeding, and finally being able to qualify. And then all this goes down, and it's like typical, like, this just feels like my life right now. And I'm like, I'm sure everyone else feels like that too. But yeah, so I when they went to we were out actually in Punta Cana when we got the announcement that they were the Boston was going to switch to September. So I'm like, like, that's fine, totally fine. Like, as long as I'm going to be able to run this is going to be great. Like, we should, that's fine, we can do this. um and then September came and then it went virtual. I'm like, oh, like, but I'm like, I just had a hard time. Like, I just don't see myself running 26 miles around my house in circles. So I'm like, I just got to find a different marathon to do and see if I can do like a little double whammy kind of thing and get another state too. Cause have been doing so many different states. I'm like, I'll see if I can get another state off on my little bucket list. So I had been looking at Brookings, and then, so I signed up for Brookings. They had limited it to like 150 people. So like, I'm pretty sure I knew it was going to happen just because South Dakota's a little bit more lax on
Yeah.
their guidelines and stuff. So then signed up for that. But the summer I hurt my quad again. So I just did a lot of cross training, and my little running buddies, they're so awesome. They're biking along with me and we're all just having a grand old time. And I didn't realize it. I didn't think at the time, like, that the biking would help as much too in the cross training. It helped a lot more than I thought I did, but I hadn't run anything more than 16 miles before this marathon. So I'm like, I just had no idea what I was getting into, like, not running more than 16, because usually I would work myself up to 22 miles, or
Hmm.
I do a couple 18s or 20 in there, a couple 20s. Um, so yeah, like, all those girls all summer long biked and ran and did whatever with me, and it was awesome to have them just as a support team. Um, and then, so I really had no expectations going into Brookings, because I'm like, this is the first time that I hadn't been able to like peak or do anything like that. But my coach he's like, he's like, you should be able to finish this pretty easily. Like, even with your biking, like, you bike for miles and miles and miles. So just having that time, like, and you have so much time from, under your feet anyways, just from the years of running. So I just ran and just took it easy. So it was kind of disappointing just being actually in the race setting, like the one and only race that I got to do that I didn't have a good build up for, but still went off. And that day, like, one of the girls that I ran with, she's like, do a gratitude for every mile. So on my arms, both of my arms, I had each mile, I had um, a gratitude for every mile. So I had some little saying for each of my kids or whatever for each mile. So I thought that, and then of course they all washed off because I sweated sweated them all off. But I'm like trying to remember each mile. Like, what was I grateful for this mile? What was I grateful for this mile? And then the miles just flew by. Like, I kept thinking to her, like, even though we've been running all summer long, and we try to do things outside of running, because like running isn't everything. It doesn't define you. So we're like, let's go golfing. So every Thursday night we had little golf nights. So I just thought about those, like just doing something different. So like that was, I think I ended up being grateful for our Thursday night golf league. For like 2 or 3 of those miles, and they just ticked off. Like it was amazing. Like just, and then one of my other friends, she's like, you'd be surprised how I think how better you're gonna do than you think you are. So I just kept going, and like the same with like Mountain Sea Beach. Like I never had that crash like I usually do, and I just kept going. But I didn't go all out because I didn't know what to expect, because I hadn't ran for so long. Like the last marathon I did was in Vegas with my sister-in-law. So it had been, well, since last November that I had actually ran a marathon for me. So that's been a long time. So it was interesting, like, but it felt great. And then my watch stopped at mile 25.49. And I was so mad. I looked down and it was like, oh, like, how am I going to get credit for Boston and this marathon? Like, I'm like, good thing I did it like this, because I'm like, how do I explain this to, how do I put my time in for Boston if I would have been like not doing this, for if I would have been doing it virtual and not an actual race. So I had to submit my time in for like with my finish time from Brookings. Like that's how I got it. But I was like, that just sums it all up. My 25.49, it just dies. My watch just dies.
That's funny.
And like that's just how 2020 is going right now. But yeah, so I finished that, and that was my Boston.
That's
And
awesome.
I kept thinking like throughout, like, okay, like going around the corner, I'm like, is this what Boston would have been like? Like just trying to envision like different spots where I think that a certain spot in Boston would have been like, or if I started getting like slowing down, like would I have been slowing down in Boston? No, like just keep on the trucking and keep going and smile at every mile, and did it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. It's cool that you got to find a race to do it with. So you could kind of make it a little bit more special. Do you feel like it was a little bit more special or meaningful for you being in an actual race, or?
Um, yes and no. Like I was excited because I was actually getting to race and have a race. Like it's not, in the end, it's not about racing. It's because I love to run, just because I love to run. So the rate, but having that excitement, the little butterflies and jitters before the race, it was nice having that again.
Mhm.
Um, but then I saw like, and I fall myself into the comparison trap, like all the people that are like running their virtuals, like just around, like with a bunch of people that they would have gone to Boston with or stuff. And then I'm like, oh, like this would have been nice to do that too. But then like, and not having a race setting, like that's determination too, like finishing 26 miles on your own. Like, so then I'm like, oh, did I jet myself out of a virtual experience that way too, versus an actual race setting? So I'm glad I did it the way I did. But it still would have been nice to, do the real thing, of course. But I don't know, like, I'm glad that I did it though.
Totally. So do you see yourself working toward Boston again to get there, to get to Boston and actually run it?
I hope so. I don't know what's going to happen like with this next year, because I really don't foresee it happening, and at least not until September. If we're lucky. So
Yeah.
I don't know like how the race. I want to. Um I signed up for grandmas. So I think they limited it this year to only 4,000 runners. I think I
Wow.
don't know if they're hoping that with a smaller amount they'll be able to pull it off. I don't know.
Mhm.
Um, so that'll be my next race. I'm hoping, like hoping that everything goes good with training and stuff throughout the winter wonderland here, since there's
You got a lot of snow.
it's horrible. I'm like, this is like, it just goes, once again, 2020, here we are with how many inches of snow in the middle of October already. But um, yeah, like it just kept coming and coming down. I'm like, ooh, this is not good.
I have to laugh about it because my best running friend came and visited us because we're from Minnesota, but we moved in the middle of the shutdown to Colorado. So she came to see why I love Colorado, and then like literally got home in the middle of the snowstorm, and I'm just like, it's 40 degrees, and I'm enjoying my run this morning.
Little jealous, little jealous.
Oh gosh, yeah. No, I don't miss the cold there, but I
And
miss.
I don't think it's gonna get any better anytime soon. Like I looked ahead and like this snow is here to stay for a while. Like I think it's here.
Yeah, so it's winter running in October, which is not normal in Minnesota.
No,
So
no.
it kind of changes the mindset right away where it's like, okay, training in winter, am I going to change it up? Like, am I going to be running outside the whole time, or I'm going to do some of the cross training and do some more strength?
Right,
You know, changing it so
right.
fast.
I
Yeah.
know.
This episode is brought to you by my book, Mind Over Marathon: Overcoming Mental Barriers in the Race of Life. If you feel like you just need a mindset shift because you are going after a goal and need some direction and encouragement, this book is for you. It will help you to ignite a passion and purpose in your life, clarify your unique game plan, and build confidence in who you are. At the end of each chapter are a quick faith devotional, thought-provoking questions, and a practical application that you can implement immediately. This book is about discovering a dream and taking it from inception to a flourishing finish. Running is optional. You can snag 2 free chapters at www.redhotmindset.com/mindovermarathon. Dream huge, and remember, you are a winner, just run your race. So I have a couple of things I want to kind of break down a little bit in your training cycle. And one of the big things I want to know is, okay, 2015, you have that crazy Chicago marathon experience at the finish line. Um, did it bother you at all? Like, were there any mental blocks that came from it? Cause you seemed like you went right back into training and was just fine, but was there anything like sticking with you from that experience?
You know, I honestly think it was in the back of my head for every race, and I think that's kind of what put the mental block on in me. Like I think that was like this running, it almost killed me. Like it literally almost killed me. And I think like I would get to a certain point in the race and realize like am I, because I didn't see it coming on. I didn't feel like I felt it coming on. Like I didn't like I when I look back on it, I stopped sweating, but it wasn't, I didn't think about it. Like, you know, like now I can think about it like, oh yeah, that was a sign. Um, but I didn't see it. So then I feared like, okay, am I going to get halfway? Like this one that I did in Vermont, like it's in the middle of nowhere, the most gorgeous race ever. But I'm
Mhm.
like, what happens if I go out? Like there's no one around me. Like, and I think that was in the back of my head for a lot of these races. Like, and I don't think I realized it, but I think it was like, just something like, yeah, like this, like this almost killed me. And my husband said, he's like, is it worth it, Shannon? Like, like you could have been brain dead. Like most people, like if you weren't fit, it's a good thing you were fit. Like
Mhm.
if you weren't fit and had this 107.3 temperature, like most people would be brain dead. Like you'd be sitting in a nursing home and we'd be taking care of you. Like, he's like, what do you want for your kids? Like, do you want a mom to be around or do you want to run? And I'm like, I want both. I want it all. But so I think, like taking a step back and realizing like, yeah, running, I think you have to have that kind of step back to realize that there are more important things than running. Um, but and it doesn't define you, but yeah, like you got to remember your why too. Like it's not about the races, like we do it because we love it and enjoy it, but at what point do you have to be like, hey, like it's taking that step back because it's not worth it, but so I struggled with that, I think, for, like for a couple months after, like when I did it, but I'm like, I can't let that get to me. And like, I need to keep going, like it's perseverance, like just trying to keep your dream alive. But yeah, it was in the back of my mind. And especially when I had then the quad tear after that, like I'm just laying in bed and I physically can't lift my leg up.
Right.
And I'm sitting in bed, laying in bed, like crying, like I can't move. And my husband's like, "You have got to stop this." He's like, "Look at like the poor kids are like seeing you in so much pain." And I'm like, yeah, but they also need to know that you just can't give up on your dreams too. And I'm like, yeah, like I get that, but like, they're like, Mom, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. But so I see that. I hope that I'm teaching them something too. Like you got to set your limits too. But like the my daughter, this was her first year in tennis. She's like, but for like, I don't know much about tennis, so this was a whole. This 2020 was like a good year for learning new things too. But she's like, when I didn't get that first serve over, I gave myself a little pep talk, and then that second serve that went over. I'm like, good. Like I feel like I'm teaching them, like, keep keep trying, keep doing your best, and eventually things will come together and it'll all work out. The first gymnastics meet my daughter had last year, she didn't medal in anything, and she was so bummed out. She's like, this is just horrible. I'm just quitting. I'm not doing this again. I'm like, just keep trying. Like every day is, you try your best, but it's best. Your best is different every day. So from then on, like all those meets, that sheer determination on her face, it was just like, wow, like I could see it in her eyes. She's like, I am not medaling this time around. She's like, I am going to do my best and I'm going to get there. And she did. She like two of her that meet. I flew out. We watched the Olympic trials, and then I flew back home to watch her meet. And ended up medaling in all of her events, and then she got first all around. So determination there. That kid has such determination. It's just crazy. So I'm glad that I didn't miss that. That was like a whirlwind weekend, like flying out to Atlanta and then coming back and watch her meet. But yeah, so like that's another thing, just determination.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think it's important for us to be an example for our kids and to kind of show them you can persevere. If I can do it, you can do it. And we have to kind of give them permission to fail, but permission
Exactly.
to rise, right? To learn from that failure. And actually, I would say my oldest son, both of them really, but they're competitive gymnasts too. There's something about gymnasts because they have that, you have to have that commitment and determination. It's a really hard sport, but he's taught me so much about that because gymnasts fail more than they succeed. I mean,
Yep.
they are 99% falling on the skills they're working on. It takes a
Yep.
long time to get those skills, and it's resilience. And so I think it's cool. You can feed off of each other. You can teach them, but yet they can teach you. And then in that, you just don't quit, and you kind of rise above it. So now I want to know too, you qualify for Boston. It's taken a while. It took 6 years of determination and some hard races. What do you think was the biggest difference maker? Was it having a coach? Was it resting and not doing 3 or 4 races in a row? Like, what do you think it was? What mental blocks like did you have to eliminate?
It was a combination of everything, I think, like having that coach, having him have the faith in you. I just turned it around. Like I was grateful, like um, just being more grateful too. Like thank you for letting me being able to run. Like like I in the past, I'm like this has been like just struggle after struggle. I'm like,
Mhm.
this is I have to have a different attitude. Be grateful, like grateful for every mile, grateful for like the chance and the opportunity that I have 2 legs to run on. Um, it was yeah, and then just have people believing in me and like believing in yourself. Like this is something like I think I can actually do. There wasn't in the time in the training that actually like any like workout or anything that led me to believe like, hey, this is amazing, like I can do it. But like I think it was just a good workout. And yeah, taking that time off in between was a good thing. Sometimes coaches are right.
Sometimes it's good to listen to them, I guess.
Yes. Um, and just having that support system, like my friends and family and my husband, if I didn't have those, like that's like, crazy. Like, my kids are such big supporters too. Like, they're like, oh, if you're not out running, you're like working and, you're on that board, like, go, mom, go, like, and I can see, some of it's like, because they know that I've been wanting this goal for so long. And they see that, and I like letting, like that they're seeing me do this, but then I also feel like, um, I should be spending more time with them too, but I think they realize, once you set a goal, like keep going after it, and so it was good. Like, I think the lead up was just good for it. This round, I hadn't started working back overnights again, so I was getting more sleep. I think that helped a lot.
Mhm.
And just having a gratitude, more gratitude, being more grateful for the opportunities that I've had.
Yeah, I love that. That's one thing. I mean, so I broke my ankle in 2018, right after I qualified for the Boston. And it actually taught me, it's your love can be taken away at any moment. So it's be grateful for what you have. Same with 2020. 2020 kind of taught this too. It was like things can be canceled just out of nowhere, right? Everything can be canceled. Life can be canceled, but to be grateful for what we still have and for just gratefulness and having that heart of gratitude because it automatically kind of keeps you positive. And I think it really does help you give fire under you to keep going. And so I think that's so important. I think that's a huge tip. I love the idea of writing down a gratitude each mile, even if it smears all over, and just really taking it in and just smiling every mile, going, hey, I get to do this. Most people would say you're torturing yourself to do it. But my husband always laughs. He's like, really, why do you put yourself through that torture? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know why I put myself through it, but I love it. And I think all runners can understand that. So now when it comes to 2020 Boston Marathon, this would have been your first Boston. Why would it have been such a victory run for you?
I think just having that perseverance and finally having my dreams come true, like working so hard to try to get to this and failing and then getting back up from that and just going at it again. So yeah, like, and then just that race, the adrenaline rush from those major marathons, having those cheer crowds and just the over, like, just I envision it like just like it was in Berlin and Boston and Chicago. That's how I envision it, and just having that too, like that feeling of like, hey, like I'm actually good enough. Never in a million years coming from the small town Minnesota girl that I would ever think I'd be. Like Boston's like the Super Bowl of, Super Bowls, like it's just, this is amazing to actually think that I've ever been good enough to make it with the big guys here, like,
Yeah.
so having that like feeling like, yeah, I am enough and I can do this and I can race with the best, and I finally qualified. Like, so that, like I missed that part of it, I think, but still knowing that I am enough and I still did it. I still qualified.
Yeah. And your virtual live race still qualified as running Boston. It might not be the same experience, but you were still out there with all the runners doing it and, being grateful that we got to do it. So I know that if crossing our fingers for 2021, I definitely think you'll get there if 2021 doesn't happen. But one thing I want you to leave listeners with, I'd love for you to just share what advice you would have for other mother runners who are trying to juggle their training and their work and their kids' schedules while still going after a goal, whether it's Boston Marathon or just a different goal. What advice would you give them?
Don't give up. Eventually having perseverance will make your dreams become alive. They will, you have, you can have everything, just maybe not necessarily all at once.
Mhm.
It just takes time and commitment. Yeah, like as long as you can see that your kids are learning from you, like even failing, just get back up again. Like I think that's the biggest, I'm hoping that's one of the things that I've taught my kids is to persevere and just keep trying. Like don't give up. And one of the days eventually all the the stars will align and everything will come together. It may take a while, but they'll eventually come together and all the stars will be sparkling that day.
I love it. That is awesome. Well, I so appreciate hearing your story. You have such a struggle victory story. I love that you did not let 2015 Boston, or not Boston, Chicago Marathon define you and change your love for running, and that you just kept going and you persevered and you hit that goal. And I just think that's really special. And I know listeners will get a lot out of today. So thank you so much, Shannon, for being here with me. I've really had fun chatting.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Gratitude. Gratitude was one of the keys that turned Shannon's mindset around and helped her break those barriers that were holding her back. I think I may need to take that and do it next time. A smile and a gratitude every mile marker during the marathon. That's so cool, isn't it? Maybe you'll want to try it. She's a mama who knows a busy yet fulfilling schedule, and she still makes time to do what she loves. She shares quite a bit about having a coach and why it is important to listen to him. I wanted to let you know if you're working toward a goal and in need of some support from a coach, I'd love to work with you. I take on a few clients at a time, and I help you with your game plan and hold you accountable to get it done. I also help you work through some of the barriers that are getting in your way and help you shift those mindsets. If you're interested in finding out how you can work with me, head on over to www.redhotmindset.com/contact to get more information and to connect with me there. I hope you enjoyed our conversation as much as I did. Until next time, I pray you just run your race. I believe in you.